Inside Football is proud to have Joey as our presenting partner. Nicotine with a quick hit, long tail, in the strength of your choice. As a thank you for being part of Inside Football's crew, we teamed up with Joey to give you a 35% discount on your first order. Get it all at meetjoey.com/football.
You have to make decisions what's best for the organization. You're never going to make everybody happy, and you're never really fully going to be able to explain yourself for some of the decisions that you make. So we knew where his ceiling could be, and his ceiling was higher than anybody else in that particular free agency class. But we also knew that he had that fight, he had that grit, he had that confidence. My biggest stressor right now is not just this year, but keeping the team together.
Yeah. Welcome to Inside Football Extra. We are here at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers training camp to uncover all the bullshit and go behind the scenes with several key members of this organization. Let's fucking do this. This is my one-on-one with Jason Licht. I've known him for over 25 years. He was my assistant GM at the Arizona Cardinals, and we are here to talk about several key topics, including Baker Mayfield extension, a possible Vita Vea trade. We just dropped a full NFC South preview. Myself, Chris Carter, Brian Urlacher, Trey Wingo, and Marvin Lewis. Here's a quick preview of it. Baker Mayfield is a very fine football player, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But generally the way these negotiations go, it's who's up next of where you're getting paid.
Correct.
Yeah.
Can you justify paying Baker Mayfield $60 million?
They got to pay somebody.
Sure.
Yeah.
And they don't have a whole bunch of stars there.
Right.
Mike Evans is gone, and you have to be able to pay guys that have put your team in a position and put that head coaching staff and that whole front office, put them in position, because when you look at that division, they can win that division every single year.
Yeah. Jason Licht, year 12.
13.
13.
Yeah.
Wow. Time flies. You've had a ton of success here. You've had a ton of success. You won a Super Bowl. I think the first question I would ask is, what do you think the best thing you learned from me?
You know what? That's a good question. I was thought about this a lot over the years. I've been fortunate to work for some really good people: Bill Belichick, Jimmy Johnson, Andy Reid, Tom Heckert. Don Shula, where I started. I learned more, and you probably did more for me than any of those people did, and not taking anything away from them, because you let me be in the driver's seat with you.
Right.
And you let me drive sometimes. And you always said, this business, we evaluate, we draft, we sign free agents, all those things, contract situations, all that. But it's a people business.
Yeah.
And you've always said at the end of the day, it's a people business. So I saw how you had to communicate, not just with the players, with the coaches, the staff, the scouts, but with the owner.
Yeah.
And that's probably the most important lesson I learned from you.
I thought you were going to tell me you learned what not to do by watching me. But all the success you've had here, and you've done it with a number of staffs, you've done it with a number of players. What do you think about your system sets you apart? Because you've done a great job drafting and building through the draft, which is the lifeblood of every organization. But what do you think sets you apart?
I've surrounded myself with great people.
Yeah.
And let them do their job, and give them freedom to do their job, and let them have a voice, and kind of sit back sometimes and just let them operate.
Yeah.
They know by now how I like things done and type of players I like, all that kind of stuff. But I think that's probably the number one thing I would tell people is just make sure you surround yourself with great people. I know that's often said, it's often used adage, but it couldn't be further from the truth.
Well, as you said earlier, we both have agreed this is a relationship business. And there's a lot of tough decisions to be made, and they're decisions that, quite frankly, in my world, kept me up at night. What are the things that are keeping you up at night nowadays? I mean, obviously, you've been doing it a long time. You've got two of your top leaders, in Baker and obviously Vita, who've just, sort of talked about their displeasures with certain things from a business standpoint. How do you handle that sort of stress and that pressure?
It's tough. It's tough with, biggest stressor right now is not just this year, but keeping the team together.
Yeah.
And go back to a great staff. We've drafted some really good players that have contracts are either going to be up after this year or going to be, eligible after this year.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the negative side of having some great drafts is you can't pay everybody.
That's right.
But you have to look at the big picture when you're making every decision, is how it's going to affect what you're going to do in the future.
Right.
So keeping the gang together is probably my biggest stressor. And the one thing that helps with that is I go home, I have a great family, I talk about it with them. It's a dinner time conversation. I trust them now. They don't go and talk to people. Obviously I trust them, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So that helps me. So I'm able to, I'm not in a situation where I'm going home and just like locking down.
Yeah. Very few GMs make it 3 years, let alone 13. I think it's a double-edged sword when you look at the way you build your roster. Okay, there's this concept of you got to win now, but then it's your responsibility to do what's best for the organization long term. How do you sort of balance that? Because it's so tough nowadays, especially with all the social media and all the pressure. How do you approach that?
I saw something that Kirby Smart said one time. I just read in an article where, you have to make decisions what's best for the organization. You're never going to make everybody happy, and you're never really fully going to be able to explain yourself for some of the decisions that you make.
That's right.
And it's tough, but you just have to, keep on track and realize that if there's some bumps in the road, it'll go away if you keep on track and with your philosophy, with what your goals are, and come out on the other side. And we did that for several years, and then ended up landing Tom Brady, a lot of good players on that team which we thought going into 2020 we had a good team. We were just missing just a couple pieces, and it showed us that just stay on the track, and it's going to be good at the end.
Yeah, I remember going to your office when I got the GM job, and you were my vice president of player personnel, and I said to you, hey, let's take a look at Carson Palmer. So we took a look at Carson Palmer, traded a ham sandwich for him. The rest is history. He had quite success with him. Sort of similarly, I think Baker was sort of in that situation. Maybe he fluctuated, would play with some bad teams. What did you see in him that separated him, that gave you the confidence that he could be your guy?
It was a very similar situation. I remember how excited you were about Carson, and more than I was at the time. I didn't know where he was in his career, and you believed in him. He was the number one pick. He had done some really good things, hit a couple rough patches, but it was the same with Baker. We really liked him coming out of the draft. He had, considering where Cleveland was, really successful year there. Almost took him to the AFC Championship. So we knew where his ceiling could be, and his ceiling was higher than anybody else in that particular free agency class. But we also knew that he had that fight, he had that grit, he had that confidence. And Todd got to get to know him pretty well during the draft process when he was with the Jets. And he really believed in him too. So it always helps when your coach is on the same page, or the coach is leading the charge on a guy that you really want.
Yeah. Training camp is where every team's dreams begin. It's about building confidence. It's about showing up and putting in the work. The players that make it on the final roster are the ones willing to step up when the moment's in front of them. That's why Joey is behind today's coverage. As a thank you for riding with us, we teamed up with Joey for 35% off your first order. Grab it at meetjoey.com/football. Sometimes from a roster makeup, I've always said, self-evaluation is the best way to learn about yourself, and the way to be, you got to be critical of yourself at times. What have you learned the most about yourself over the years in terms of the mistakes you've made, the things you've done well, and sort of where you're at now in your career?
I've learned that mistakes are going to be made, and you have to put them in the rearview mirror, and you have to just keep plodding forward and not dwell on them. because nobody's perfect. I've also learned that you have to rely on your tight-knit group that you have working for you.
Yeah.
And you have to keep them involved because we're in this together.
Yeah.
There's a lot of rocky roads, there's
Yeah.
a lot of ups and downs, and you can't silo yourself during those times. You got to keep, even when things are great, you got to
Yeah.
keep them involved.
In your 13 years, there's been a lot of changes in the National Football League. What has struck you as maybe the biggest change that you've seen over the years, as it has to do with your job, or building a roster, or keeping, like you said, keeping the gang together? What has maybe been the biggest challenge, and maybe what have you seen the biggest change over that time?
That's a good question. It's ever evolving. It's been harder and harder to get to when it pertains to the draft, which is my favorite time of the year. Which I know it was your favorite. Getting to the real information on the players, and they're prepped very well. You don't necessarily get the real story when you're in the schools because they're trying to sell their players to help their program, and I mean that's right. They justifiably they should.
Yeah.
But it's been harder and harder. Now, luckily, I've had a staff that I've had for a long time. Some of these guys have been with me 10, 12, even longer years. And, when they're in the trenches, as long as they have been, they've formed relationships, getting back to that are able to get that information. But it's getting harder for everybody.
Yeah. The NFL is such a competitive league, and obviously it's getting more and more stressful. I think the one thing that set us apart when we worked together, and I'd like to say that we had a lot of success together for a reason. And the one thing that I know that we did was we had fun as well doing the job.
Yep.
A lot of fun. Are you able to still?
Too much sometimes.
Are you still able to have fun in your position after all these years?
Yes, and you have to make an effort to do that, and whether it's every once in a while, take everybody out of the office, go have a few drinks, have whatever. I happen to love playing Golden Tee and having a Golden Tee tournament, whether it's a Friday afternoon, Thursday afternoon, and in the office, when we're having meetings, watching tape, film review, just having fun with it.
Yeah.
And so you have to, otherwise if you take yourself too seriously, it usually doesn't work.
And I know working with you, obviously, one thing that we, always had good relationships with a lot of guys, like Larry Fitzgerald. We would joke and have fun with him. And, a lot of the older guys that have been around a long time, you build those relationships and that rapport. How has it been with Vita Vea since, he'd been with you so long? I know you have a ton of respect for him, and I know you love him. Going through some of this stuff, how do you handle that?
Well, you try to just be upfront. You try to be, maintain the relationship best you can. Sometimes it's a little challenging.
Yeah.
You were excellent at that with the players, being upfront. We had a couple instances where you had to tell them the way it was.
Yeah.
But I also liked at the end the respect they had. I remember the time that Darren College came up and went and bought us Louis Vuitton shoes.
Our first pair.
Our first pair. I look like I did not deserve to have Louis Vuitton shoes. You taught me how to dress a little bit better as the years went on, yeah.
But, I know that because at the end of the day in our positions, unfortunately, like Larry Fitzgerald, we were fortunate enough to have him retire as a Cardinal. For a GM, very few players get to do that, correct? Mm-hmm. So in those cases, it really doesn't always end well. And it's just because time passes. It's not because of anything you've done or the organization's done. It's just unfortunate that it has to end that way. And that, I think, is one of the hard parts about our job.
Very hard. Very, very hard. In an ideal world, you'd want every player that you hit on, that you sign, especially in the draft, so they start their career here, to end their career here. But unfortunately, it doesn't always work that way.
What are the next steps for you guys in terms of, obviously you dealt with a lot of injuries on the offensive line last year. We talked about it on the field. That gave Carolina a chance to sort of leapfrog you guys. In my opinion, I think you guys are the cream of the crop in the NFC South. But at the same time, you got to keep this thing together. And obviously, we always talk about next man up. But when next man up is Joey Bag of Donuts, it's pretty tough. Yeah. How do you handle those sort of things?
You know, we're constantly, just like we were when we worked together, we're constantly having awesome staff. We're constantly scouring the waiver, looking at players, potential trades, who's available now, bringing guys in for workouts. We've had success over the years of bringing players in late in camp that didn't have a home, that ended up making a contribution for us or helping us. You just have nonstop. You just have to keep going. It's never going to be perfect. You know, we used to always say, you could be coming off a Super Bowl win and you're still going to have a lot of needs.
That's right.
You know,
Exactly right.
It's not going to be perfect.
Yeah, and the way us as GMs have to look at it is, you have to look and find the holes, even if you have a really good roster.
Mm-hmm.
You have to sort of look ahead and sort of see, if this guy goes down, can this guy play? Can he really do it and play at a high level and love for us to have winning football, right?
And it's tough. The fans and the media, they seem to sometimes, not all, but seem to think that you're going to have a Pro Bowler ready to go in the wings, and the offensive line. You should have 10 guys that can go out there and start right away. So it's tough.
To finish up, I thought maybe you'd want to tell your favorite story about the time we got in our 3-point stances in the hotel in Minneapolis.
I'll probably have to leave out the reason why we got into the 3-point stance.
Yeah,
but we went. It was late night.
Yeah.
You were laughing because you were laughing at the reason I was upset.
Right.
And that pissed me off even more.
Right.
So I said, let's do it. We got down. And I fired off before you knew that I was going to fire off.
Yeah, you jumped the gun.
I jumped the gun. You went on your back. You're laughing. And I stepped on your chest and ran to my door and shut it and locked it.
I was literally laying on my back like a turtle laughing. So anyways, there you have it. Inside Football. Tune in. Jason Licht, one of the best in the business.
Appreciate you.
We got more interviews and we got more content coming. We need you locked in now. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel and tune in for our NFC South preview.